Hello everyone and welcome back. Let's continue our discussion on depreciation and specifically the interesting fact about switching from declining balance depreciation method to straight line depreciation method. If you remember in the last video, we figured that at some point there is a tax advantage to switch from declining balance, which you started with, up until some point that straight line would give you more depreciation. And we want to find that point, that optimal point of switching from declining balance to a straight line. You may wonder, is it possible? Is it legal to do that? Well, it turns out it is, but let's wait for that. So there is a tax advantage in depreciating as quickly as possible. A declining balance method gives you fast initial depreciation, but straight line will give you faster depreciation later. So we want to know when to switch. Well, switch to SLN or straight line method when for the first time depreciation of straight line method is greater than depreciation of declining balance method. If you're at year 4, let's say, and you're preparing your taxes for that year, calculate the depreciation of straight line method, calculate the depreciation of declining balance method, and see which one is bigger. Well, it turns out if you dive into the formulas, declining balance of straight line method at any year is the book value of previous year minus salvage value, which is essentially the amount left to depreciate divided by the number of years left. So this is the depreciation of straight line method at any year. If that turns out to be bigger than depreciation of declining balance, which is percentage times book value of previous year, then you have to make that switch. That's the optimal point to switch from declining balance to straight line method. So what needs to happen is at any year that you are filing your taxes, you got to make this comparison. If you're at year 2, your T is 2. If you're at year 3, your T is 3. And you make this comparison and see if it's optimal to switch. And this is actually the steps that you need to follow. Essentially what we just discussed about. Looking at this ratio, and if it's greater than dt of declining balance, make the switch. In fact, I did that for the example that we've been studying. In that example, I jumped into year 3. I didn't waste my time doing year 1 and 2, but if you don't know where exactly is the optimal point, you got to start doing this from year 1. But in year 3, I calculated the ratio. It turns out that ratio is not greater than declining balance depreciation. So I, continue with declining balance. Going to year 4, I calculated the ratio. It turns out that ratio is still not bigger than declining balance. So again, I stay with declining balance. But in year 5, that's when the ratio is bigger than declining balance. So that's when you switch to a straight line method. And let's go back to the question that we had in mind at the beginning. Is it legal to do this? Is it possible? In fact, it is. And that's the essence of this method that we're going to talk about. Modified Accelerated Cost Recovery System, or MACRS method. MACRS method is the most commonly used depreciation method for computing tax liability. In fact, it's the only depreciation method approved for use in the U.S. For the income tax purposes after 1986. So that's the method for income tax purposes, which is a great news for taxpayers because they're able to make that switch and reduce their taxable income further. So there are 2 forms of MACRS. The first one is GDS, or General Depreciation System. That's what we're going to focus on. It's more popular and it accelerates the depreciation in compared to the alternative depreciation system, which is slower in depreciation. It's less popular and required for certain type of property. So for the Purpose of this course, we're going to focus on GDS, or General Depreciation System. And in the next video, we're going to get into details of this method. How can we calculate that and how it works?